people, we can have a little leeway. We got this way. We can't have more than 20 people. 3 minutes is
just up there.
No, I'm still on.
Maybe I need to see some
Um,
pie charts.
So since we have three, okay.
You're a
I wasn't
visual
sure how
learner?
many we were
Oh
gonna get.
my
The
God,
last
I
time we
get
were-
my money
Yes.
and my cell phone
It's a
again
school
today.
day.
Oh, I
Yep.
I still
Yep.
owe $20.
Okay.
You do.
Yeah, I know.
Let me get rid of my
You
gum.
know what?
Won't be too
I paid him.
forgot.
My God, I paid him.
Yeah, you did.
especially on TV.
I remember. Here, this will give the audience buzzing when they somebody $20.
You okay? You? Oh, the flag's behind us.
Is it ready?
I don't know.
She's still out. She's still got cold. Yeah, cold. I know. All day I felt that way.
She's
Cold.
getting one.
It's going to be up to
Mine's-
60 on
mine's
Wednesday,
coming.
then we'll be $30.
Starting to feel.
I had one over the weekend.
Right.
What
Oh,
about
I'm
you?
working, Michael. I'm not fooling around.
I went last night.
I'm working.
You
All
know,
right.
Everybody's ripped rolled.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're on camera, dear.
Good evening. I think so. I'd like to ask that we observe a moment of silence for the following individuals. Give me a chance. Edward W. Van Alstine, who attended school and also was a retired employee of the North Syracuse Central School District. Peter F. Moore, a 1973 graduate of the North Syracuse Central School District. Mary E. Wright Patinella, attended school in the North Syracuse Central School District. Roger G. Parent, attended school in the North Syracuse Central School District. And Henry Fisher, a former member of the North Syracuse Board of Education, and also chaired our annual meeting for 15 or more years. I knew Hank personally. Hank Fisher was the quintessential North Syracuse resident. He actually came to my place of employment many, many years ago with two other individuals and asked if I would join the Rotary Club of North Syracuse, which I did. And I have to say that I was able to meet some of the most dedicated and wonderful, well, at that time, I was in my early 30s, and most of these gentlemen were in their 60s and 70s and had been in this community, some of them all their lives. And they showed me how to be a good volunteer. They showed me how to be dedicated to our community, and they showed me how to do what's right for people and to treat people as I would want to be treated. Hank Fisher was instrumental in that. As a matter of fact, I met 2 or 3 school board members during my tenure on the Rotary, and that's one of the reasons that I decided to run for the school board. So Hank Fisher will be sorely, sorely missed. Bob, are you down there? You wanted to say something?
Thank you, Pat. I, too, am saddened tonight about the passing of Henry Hank Fisher. As Pat said, Hank was a member of the school board for 6 years, being vice president for 2 of the years. And as Connie knows, and Kay and Sandy, for 15 years he chaired the annual meeting. But personally, I knew Hank because I was his son's teacher in the 1970s at the Pitcher Hill Elementary School, which is presently the district office. Later, I got to know Hank as a great supporter of the North Syracuse Dollars for Scholars. Hank was one of the founding fathers of the organization in 1985. He believed that our students here in North Syracuse should have a chance to obtain funding for secondary education. Hank always participated in our annual golf tournament and sent a yearly check to support the youth of our community. Within the next 2 years, this organization that Hank started in 1985 will reach $1 million in scholarship monies for the kids of this community. Today, I received a letter from Hank that he dated in September, and his wife sent to me. He said how much he loved this organization, and that with his passing, donations please be sent to our organization, Dollars for Scholars. He will be remembered forever. Thank you.
Just would like to add something. When we were starting up Dollars for Scholars, I was part of the inaugural board. It was Hank who gave us the seed money to get started and floated us a loan of over $2,000, which we paid him back over a period of many years. He was a wonderful gentleman and really a pillar of this community, and I will miss seeing him.
Really is. I remember riding in the car with him quite a few times, and whenever we would come to a school crossing, he would make sure that he told me, remember that you're supposed to go what the speed limit says at a school crossing. You know, on South Bay and on Route 11, and he was a wonderful guy. He'll be greatly missed. Okay, where are we presentations wise? Well, are we going to take those presentations first? Why don't we do that? Okay.
Good evening. We'd like to acknowledge two students. A couple months ago, we decided that at our board meetings, we were going to highlight some of the great things that our students and staff are doing. And so tonight, our first recipient is Jacqueline Akins. Is she here? Where is she? She's back there. Jacqueline, come on up. Jacqueline Akins was recently honored for her exemplary volunteer service with a President's Volunteer Service Award. Jacqueline participated in the Spirit of Community program this year as a representative of Key Club and the Big Brothers Big Sisters mentoring program at the high school. The Prudential Spirit of Community Awards program recognizes young people across America for outstanding community service activities. The recipients of these awards demonstrate that young people are making contributions to the health and vitality of their communities. The Prudential Spirit of Community Award was presented to Jacqueline on behalf of President Barack Obama. Congratulations. Our second recipient tonight is Brianna Stewart. Brianna? Where is she? How you doing? We want to acknowledge Brianna Stewart for her excellent high school athletic accomplishments as one of the North Syracuse finest athletes. Everyone calls you Bree, so. Bree has been selected to play in the Women's Basketball Coaches Association High School All-Star Game held at the site of the Final Four in Denver on March 31st, 2012. Only the top 20 high school players in the country are named as WBCA All-Americans and are eligible to play in the All-Star Game. Additionally, some of her other amazing accomplishments are January 31st, 2012, she scored her 2,000 points, USA Female Basketball Player of the Year, Nesmith Player of the Year, Morgan Wooten Player of the Year Award, Women's Basketball Coaches Association Player of the Year, McDonald's All-American, and Parade Magazine Player of the Year. So tonight, Brianna, we'd like to acknowledge your great accomplishment. We look forward to seeing many more accomplishments from you, and congratulations.
I guess I really have to start watching UConn play now. Good luck to you, Bree. Done a wonderful job, and we're so proud of you. Great job. Okay, before we go to comments of the audience, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the format. During the budget season, the last couple of budget seasons, what we decided that we would do was expand the comments of the audience portion of the meeting from the normal 30 minutes to 1 hour. And the reason we determined we wanted to do that is because in the past, well, I would have to say for the last 5 or 6 budget seasons, we have been in really serious fiscal condition due to state aid and all kinds of other things. And we would get to the point where we had our public hearing, and at that point, all of the budget is adopted and set, and basically it's just a more or less an informal presentation relative to what the determinations of the budget and what the budget was going to be. So we determined that in an effort to allow folks to have some time to say what they may feel or come up with ideas or make comments relative to the budget. Last year, I think, or the year before last, we had one meeting where we expanded the comments section to an hour. And then last year, every single budget meeting, which is inclusive of this being the first formal budget meeting of the season, we had that hour time frame. By rules of the board, we allow 30 minutes or an hour. Depending on the number of speakers, we allot enough time for, in an hour time frame, 20 people to speak. 3 minutes is usually the time limit that we afford. We like to try to give everyone a chance to speak as long as possible. And, you know, if time constrains that ability, then we hold you to the 3 minutes. If there's a little bit more leeway, then we allow for a little bit more leeway with that respect. One of the things in an effort to keep on task relative to the kind of work that we have to do and the decisions and deliberations that we make here, we do not normally get into a back and forth kind of a open type conversation. That's to keep the meeting in order, to keep decorum, and to keep things moving along, especially in these meetings. There's a lot of content, there's a lot of presentations, a lot of work that has to be done. Even at some point towards the end, we get to the part where we're actually deliberating what is going to be in and what may be taken out, and all of those other very difficult things that we have to decide on. So we try to keep that. We try to keep a balance to the best of our ability. One of the things that you know, I have to say, because there's some presentations here, some comments about the football situation. When it comes to the personnel record of employees, we really cannot discuss back and forth any kind of issues relative to their performance and personnel issues. That doesn't mean that we are not interested in hearing what you have to say, and that doesn't mean that we don't read every email and every letter that we get and deliberate on any decision we may or may not have to make, taking those into consideration. But we can't, it's a very, very complicated issue relative to the employment history of any of our employees, so we have to be very careful about answering questions and responding to emails and those kinds of things relative to that. So I want you to understand that that if we don't banter back and forth or we can't answer some of your questions, that it's not because we don't want to, and it's not because we're ignoring you or your thoughts or what you're trying to bring forward. It's just that regulations and laws say that we can't. One of the things that we're faced with here, and one of the most important things that we're looking at, and that we're looking for you and kind of for your input and for your consideration, is the fact that we've talked about the tax cap. We're probably going to talk about it at every one of these meetings. Wayne before him and Don has, I think, done a really good job of taking a complicated issue and kind of trying to bring it down so even we can understand it. Because I'll tell you, when we look at formulas and we look at how the state passes out its aid and how they fund schools, some of us around the table have been here 19, 20, 25 years, and it's difficult for us to understand sometimes. So I think that Don, has been talking about the tax cap. We'll continue to try to make that understandable for all of us. But I reiterate that if by law we can say that we want to raise our taxes 14.8%, something around in that number, and not that that's something that I don't think any of us can swallow, but we'll just say that in the world we live in, that's going to be the tax increase, and everyone agrees to that. If that's the case, we are still looking at a $5.8 million budget reduction that has to be made. If our budget goes down twice, we're looking at $9.4 million that we have to cut out of our budget. Up to in the last 3 years, I think we've cut $15.8 million, $15.2 million in cost we've cut, plus how many positions, Don?
Approximately 200.
Approximately 200 positions. So if you ask me, I don't know how our people are doing anything with the resources and the people that we have left. So, these are tough times. I think I've said it before, but I think we're at the point where the rubber has met the road, and we have to try to figure out what the best way to do what we have to do for our children and for our education process as we can. So, with that, again, I'll call up our first speaker, Bill Golombeski. Bill, I think you were here last week. Come on right up to the microphone if you could. Welcome. I appreciate that. And again, I want to say to you that I would never not let you speak, even though you didn't sign up, because it's important that you wanted to say what you had to say. And I would, again, the only way I would keep you to 3 minutes if we had 20 people that wanted to speak, or 10 the other night that wanted to speak. So go ahead, Bill.
All right, being handed out to you right now is some documentation. At the last meeting, I was told nothing can be done without documentation. Well, I'm not sure how much documentation is needed to prove that we've only had one winning season at the varsity level, but here are the facts. Remember, this is Section 3. Section 3 is the governing body for athletics, and they don't care who the coach is, what the situation is. They only report the facts. If you look on the front cover, that's my son. That's a picture of him after the Liverpool game this year, one of their losses. Look closely at his picture. What do you think is going through his head? Is it committed to excellence, as is plastered on the building, as seen from every point of the high school? Or is it total devastation, heartbroken, and embarrassment? A picture says 1,000 words, and like I said at the last meeting, you caused this. Inside the first page, you'll find some stats that I find rather interesting. Whoever is reporting on the website as far as the wins and losses is not reporting the same numbers as what Section 3 is. I know who this is, but because we can't discuss the personnel issues. I'll let you figure out who that is. At the last meeting, Mr. Crabtree said my facts weren't truthful. That told me and many others who watched the video that the correct facts have not been given to the board. If anybody should know, it would be Mr. Crabtree, since he's at just about every function for these kids. So tonight you have the facts in front of you. The facts remain the same, that we've had one winning varsity football season in 10 years. Every coach we spoke to has asked the same thing. What the heck is going on? With all of our talent, all of our supporters, and all of our kids, why are we allowing this to continue? The most respected coach in Section 3 has even said that this is criminal that we're allowing this to happen. Well, I, along with just about every other parent involved with the football program, from the modified all the way up to the varsity, are asking why. The fact that 6 of the most talented, well-liked coaches have quit for the same reason baffles me that you don't see a problem that needs fixing. Oh, by the way, all of these coaches win, something that's poorly lacking at the varsity level. The fact that this board is disregarding the facts that we've only had one winning season at the varsity level in 10 years tells me that either this board doesn't care about athletics or you just don't understand why successful athletics is so important to our students' lives. At the last president's meeting, Pat made the comment that he felt uncomfortable talking about this. It should make you uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. Your decision has again put CNS football team at historically a high risk for failure. I understand the tough decisions you guys have to make as a board. You said yourself that Dr. Dice has asked you, and you need to have those tough discussions. So why are you setting our kids up again for failure? You as board members have been elected to make the tough decisions for the betterment and the best interest of our kids. Personal friendships, personal and professional relationships, and just because he's a nice guy should not interfere with you making the right decision for our kids. It's our kids, it's their future. Committed to excellence starts right here. Thank you, and I'll see you everybody at the next meeting.
Thank you. Brian DeMonte. Welcome.
Good evening, and thank you for your attention while I'm granted this time to speak. I'd first like to say I'm here kind of at the peril of my son's potential playing time next year for football. It's just because I believe so firmly that a change is needed in the head coaching position. By all accounts, my son's a pretty good football player, and after my time here, I'm worried that the current coach will take retribution against my son, so I'm here at his risk. That being said, I do understand there are a lot of important issues you guys are facing. This board does have a lot of tough decisions to make, which is why it's troublesome to a majority of us parents and taxpayers in the school system. The decision to replace the varsity football coach should be a rather easy one, considering all the facts that have been presented to you so far. Which is why I cannot sit idly by and watch my son risk his body for a coach that I do not feel is worthy. I played football and sacrificed my body for my coach. I played football, Mr. Golombiewski brought up all the statistics at the last meeting, clearly shows the current coach's ineptitude. I emailed several questions to you last week. I understand Connie was out last week, so you didn't get them until today maybe. I don't know for sure. So without those answers, and based upon the approval of the board to bring back Mr. Ellis, I'm to assume that you're happy to see 6 very good coaches leave our program because I could no longer sit back and watch its decline rapidly. From a parent and taxpayer looking in, when 6 people decide to leave at the same time for the same reason, it would cause one to pause a little bit, I would imagine. I don't know what your thoughts were. You guys can't communicate with us, so I don't know. Due to the fact my son has been with these three of those coaches that have left for the last 2 years, I've gotten to see firsthand how they coach, how they interact with the players and their character. I would consider them top-notch in all three categories. After witnessing 8 years of Mr. Ellis coaching and interacting with his players, I see a disconnect. I do. I'm not here to bash him as a human being because I'm sure he's a very good family man, a very good individual, a very good person. I really believe that. But our goal as taxpayers and parents and board members should be to see that we get the best possible to teach our kids. I'm just in awe in the fact that you would let 6 people leave while retaining 1. The numbers don't add up to me. Who, in my opinion, should be the one to be leaving. I've had conversations with other high school and college coaches regarding our program. One very prominent coach in our division said to me that he should be afraid of playing CNS every year, but is not. The coaching just isn't there. He has said to me, and I quote, "It is criminal to have all that talent and be as bad as they are. If I were coaching there, we would be in the running for a state championship every year." I have refrained from using his name because he doesn't know I'm here. I didn't tell him I was coming here. It was unsolicited when he told me that, so I could ask him if you so choose. Another gentleman, Bob Casulo, he used to coach special teams up at Syracuse University. He coached the Seattle Seahawks, Liverpool High a number of years ago. He spoke with my father. My father mentioned to him that his grandson plays for CNS. Unsolicited to him, he said, and I'm using his words here, so don't imply anything, but that guy at CNS has no bleeping clue. He shouldn't be coaching. This is coming from a college coach basically laughing at our program. There has been zero positive feedback from anybody. I could tell you, if there was any, I would tell you, but there isn't. From anybody. To me, it's unacceptable to have our students playing for somebody such as that. I don't know if anybody here played football at varsity level or higher. I don't know. But there's a lot that goes into preparing for a season, a practice, even a game plan. Clear it seems Mr. Ellis struggles with this idea as well. When I see our quarterback running from one sideline all the way to the other and then back into the huddle just to get a play in and running out of the time clock, it's a little appalling to me, as it should be to you as well. Our quarterback literally runs 10 miles a game. I mean, he's got to be the most exhausted player on the field. There is wristbands, there's signals, there is, running a receiver in to call the play. There's a whole bunch of different options there. I can't believe that nobody has made a suggestion to him. Now, in football, a lot of times winning plays may come down to strength, who's stronger, in other words. But if you don't have the stronger player, technique has to come into play here. I don't see the technique being taught to win every play. You're not going to win every play in football, I get that, but at least be competitive. Wins and losses are not important to me. I mean, they are. That's why we have state playoffs and all that stuff. But we aren't even competitive anymore. Just to give you an idea, the CBA game this year, the score at halftime was 28-14. We scored 14 points off of 2 runbacks, kind of fluke plays, if you will. We got smoked in that game. I mean, we didn't even have a chance. But we were still in the game at halftime because we had 2 athletes that could play. We ended up losing 49-14, just so you know. If it was close and we're in every game and we're losing by a couple of points here and there, I can live with that. I can. It's the fact that we aren't getting the competitive nature out of our kids. In closing, we just want what's best for our student athletes. I know there are better, more qualified people to teach them. With all the turmoil, you would think the board, would step back and say, maybe I don't know enough about football, or I should listen to people who do and perhaps do a little research, call another coach that's in our division that's been there for a number of years, get their opinion. Are our kids getting the best that is available, in other words? I know of at least 2 people that are much more talented and willing to coach this team properly. I know I can't do it. I'll tell you right now I couldn't do it, because I know my limitations. I just wish that Mr. Ellis would too. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sam Galster.
Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome.
Appreciate the opportunity to talk. I know this is definitely under 3 minutes. My name is Sam Gelster. My wife Karen and I live at 8630 Weaver Road in Cicero. We retired in September 2010 after 20 years working for the Onondaga County Department of Social Services. During my career as a welfare fraud investigator, I was laid off twice in 1993 and 1997 due to budget problems, so I'm not really in favor of people losing their jobs. However, I've watched the video of the last school board meeting on February 27th, 2012, and I have some concerns. Last year we were hit with the town reassessment along with the 5% increase that was voted for in our 2011 school taxes. This double whammy resulted in a 33% increase in our school tax bill in 1 year. Trying to absorb such an increase was difficult, to say the least. My wife and I went to one vehicle. I took a part-time job where I now work 30 hours a week to help pay the taxes here. Our county property taxes also increased 22%. In actual dollars, we had to come up with over $1,500 with little notice or time to plan. We have a modest 1,400 square foot ranch home on a regular sized lot on Weaver Road. It is not lakefront property and was built in 2004. But times are tough, so we sacrificed. Gave up some things such as trips and travel and tried to get along with less money. After watching the video of the town hall meeting, we contacted State Assemblyman Don Miller's office and discussed the proposed school tax increase you are seeking. He couldn't believe this district needed more money. I heard something in the school board meeting about reduced state funding, so Mr. Miller's staff referred us to a website where we could see the actual budget numbers, which I have right here. In 2011, the North Syracuse School District was allocated $53,531,687. In 2012, the North Syracuse School District is budgeted to receive $57,552,284, an increase of 7.5%. I saw Don Keegan say that the stock market is down, and that is why retirement contributions are up, because fund balances are down. The Dow is at an all-time high and closed today at 12,962 points. I am a member of the state retirement system, and I get letters from the New York State Comptroller regularly. I have a letter from Mr. DiNapoli dated February 15th, 2012. The letter stated that the New York State Common Fund is valued at $140.3 billion. In an earlier correspondence, he stated that due to the great performance of the stock market for 2011, the retirement fund was up over 14%. I listened to Superintendent Kim Dice-Fawcett use words like, "We will broach the subject of doing more with less, and we are discussing ways to save money and cut costs." I heard no concrete proposals. Why do you need more money specifically? The bottom line is regular people are being priced out of their homes in this town. This town's population has grown 13% in the last couple years, and there are many new houses and businesses which have broadened the tax base. You have more money to work with. Inflation is at 2.93%, wages have stagnated, Social Security recipients haven't received the cost of living increase in 2 years, and gas prices are almost $4 a gallon. Where will we get the money to pay yet another 4.75% increase? It is my belief that you have to accept that we are living through the worst economy since 1929. It's time the district took a hard look at consolidating and maybe combining and eliminating non-union positions such as high-paid administrators. At least you should be able to get by on the increased money you are already receiving and not ask for an increase on the already overburdened property taxpayers. I will vote no on any proposed increase, and I invite my fellow citizens to do the same. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Before we move on, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the comments relative to the football coach. I have to tell you folks out there. I know that you're passionate, and I know that you have done your homework and that you have facts relative to, the record and some other things that have gone on in the program. I have to say to you that we've taken and looked at every letter. We've read every single one of them. We have evaluated all of the facts that we have on all sides of the issue. We have had our attorneys involved in all of those things that we have to do to make sure that we are making sometimes not the most popular decision, but the decision that we have to make relative to any issue in regards to anything that we have to determine or decide. It was a difficult decision that we made. We've made it, unfortunately, and we're not going to revisit it at this point in time. So, again, I appreciate the fact that you come to us. I encourage you to continue to come to us if that's what you would like to do, but we're not going to revisit the issue, at least not right now. So with that, we'll move on to the next. We've got comments from the superintendent.
We're going to have a couple of presentations regarding the budget. And Donald, where's that other letter here? I want to read this one. She's got to take this first. I want to read it. They won't be able to hear her. Yeah, I want to read it again. Sometimes I like to see it. Oh, I apologize. We're going to do a budget presentation, and hopefully that will clarify some outstanding questions that individuals in the audience may have. Donald Keegan, our Assistant Superintendent for Management, is going to do the presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Don. Thank you.
One of the topics that has recently been discussed and came through loud and clear in the strategic planning process was the topic of full-day kindergarten. And so we obviously, as we go through our budgeting process, we wanted to analyze this and understand the economics of it. And so the purpose of this very brief presentation is to share with you some of our findings on full-day kindergarten. We look at our kindergarten enrollment today, and it's about 600 students. And the ideal class size, our targeted class size, is 22 children per class. The average salary for a kindergarten teacher would be $55,240. That's based on the fact that we have some positions that were eliminated over the last several years. Those folks would be recalled to fill the full-time position. Based on enrollment, as I mentioned, we have 600 children in our current kindergarten program. If we had a full-day program, we would expect that number to increase by about 10% to 660 students. And that's because folks that want full-day kindergarten are currently sending their kids to parochial schools, and we believe that population would come back to CNS. We estimate that we would require 16 additional classroom teachers and 6 special teachers. Special teachers would be those that teach music, art, and gym. We looked at this program over the course of a 5-year period, and we're assuming that over that period of time, maybe salaries would increase by 2%, benefits by 8% a year based on recent trends. And we get a thing called conversion aid from the state, and we're assuming no change in that, as well as no change in the enrollment through 16-17. And so here are the numbers that we put together. The additional salary costs under the 2012-13 year would be $883 for classroom teachers, $883,000 for classroom teachers. Special teachers would be $331,000, or a total additional salary of $1,215,000. The benefits associated with those folks would be $24,000 for a total additional teacher cost of $1.7 million. The one-time conversion aid, that's an aid that New York State provides to school districts that go from half-day to full-day. That aid is $5,924 per additional full-time student. In our case, 660 students. So that's $3.9 million of aid. So the total aid in the 2012-13 year would be $3.9 million. So the difference between the 1.7 of higher costs and the 3.9 would be a positive impact of $2.1 million in the first year. Unfortunately, the way conversion aid works is that you do not get aid for the subsequent 2 years. So the next 2 years, we would be in the red by $1.8 million. We'd have a negative impact of $1.8 million in each of those next 2 years. In the third year, 2015-16, we would begin to get normal foundation or recurring state aid for our kindergarten program. And the net impact, the loss, would drop to about $750,000 to $800,000 a year. And so the bottom line on full-day kindergarten is that if we chose to do it, the cost would be between $750,000 and $800,000 a year, just considering the personnel costs versus aid. So it would have a negative impact on our economic situation long term. Some other considerations in our analysis: we didn't add in supplies and maintenance, and those would be additional costs that we'd have to consider. We do currently, based on our enrollment, have sufficient space in our buildings, although we may have to consider a realignment as populations grow in Cicero and Clay, and we wouldn't consider a building realignment at this time. We'd visit that in subsequent years. And some concerns we have is, given the $750,000 to $800,000 negative impact per year, could we sustain it financially in future years? And if we are looking at other staff reductions, how would the community and the staff respond to adding kindergarten staff while we cut other positions at other grade levels? So we'd have all of those things that we'd need to consider with full-day kindergarten. But we wanted to share with the community this information, as fast as possible, so that they would know that we were considering it with the 2012-2013 budget. Dr. Dice, did you have any comments on full-day kindergarten?
No, as Donald indicated, we are really working to ensure that we are as transparent as we need to be. Through the initial discussions that we had with the community and staff and key stakeholders, some of the conversation revolved around full-day kindergarten. And through the review of all of the information that has come back through the survey and feedback, we decided that we would at least look at the numbers and bring that information back to the community, but also back to the board for consideration as we proceed through the budget process to determine what we will consider doing differently next year. Once again, ensuring that everything is aligned with the STRAP plan.
Just to recap, what you're telling us is that the aid is front-loaded, that you get 3 years' worth of aid in 1 year, but you don't get that aid in the 2 years following, which is why we would incur a deficit. And if you put that aid for the other 2 years, if you bank it, so to speak, you're still going to have a deficit in terms of the cost of doing that. And in order to get that aid, we would have to convert all kindergarten classes to full-day classes. We could not do a partial thing, allowing the opportunity, say, of one class in different school buildings for people who, for economic considerations, would prefer a full-day kindergarten. So it's either an all-or-nothing thing.
That's correct.
And the aid is front-loaded. We looked at this over a period of years, and this was the consideration, the way the aid was presented to us, that among other considerations like space at that point, yes, among space and whatever, But that was a big nut, and I just, we're going to, of course, talk about this later, but I have to say that as much as educationally I favor this, I do not think that this is the time, with the economic constraints that we have, the economic climate, and the fact that our citizens are overburdened, that this is the time necessarily to make this change. And I want to say, too, that the point that you bring up, that where we're going to have to be increasing class size and making staff cuts in other areas, I think the matter of equity to other staff and other students is something that we have to look at also, and it's a very good point you raised.
I can just say something real quick, Pat?
Yeah, go ahead.
I do want to thank Dr. Dice and Don for doing this. This is the first time since I've been on the school board in 2.5 years that I've seen a report on full-time kindergarten, and I appreciate all the time that's been spent on it, because I think when we look at the strategic plan, which will be coming out shortly, we'll see that this is overwhelming item that the staff wants and overwhelming community wants. Unfortunately, we're in an economic situation, but I appreciate the time spent on this so that we can come back to it.
The next presentation is a presentation that I'm going to do here. The numbers are for North Syracuse, but I have to tell you, I could do this presentation at any school in upstate New York about the current economic trends.
Hold on one second.
Oh, sure.
Do you have a question, Ken?
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's okay.
I'm the one that brought this up. Tell me on what is it, $100,000 house?
Yeah.
What the impact would be on the taxes that we're not going to get the third and fourth year. Please, do you know that?
If we did all-day
Second and third
kindergarten,
year.
what would the tax impact be on a $100,000 house?
I'd have to do the calculation.
That's fine. Just as long as I know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
next board
absolutely.
meeting, or
I can do that calculation for
Okay.
you.
Sorry,
Thanks.
I didn't
Yeah,
know
that makes
this.
sense to know that.
Thank you. I need to know that.
I have one other question.
Go ahead,
good.
Pat.
With that,
Pat, would you use a mic, please?
I'm trying.
Okay.
With the 3.9 million that we have, is there any way to earmark that money, the other half of it, for the following year?
They have to.
Oh, sure. I think you'd want to do that.
Right, but is it legally? Are we able to do that legally?
Yeah, you would just not spend that money, and it would go into the general fund balance, and then you'd spend it in subsequent years.
You still
But
I
that
just want to
still
make
would
sure
create
that
the
something
same-
like that wouldn't put us over the 4%. What I'm saying, is there any way that we could say specifically for, that, and then we would be safe? That's all I was asking.
Yeah, I think in light of our inability to grow the fund balance to the 4% through our normal operations,
keep us
we'd have
safe
plenty of
anyways.
room to store that money if we needed to.
You would
Speaking of,
still, though, Pat, have the $700,000 plus discrepancy between that money and what you have to expend to perpetuate full-day kindergarten.
Yeah, I think Kay's question covered that. That's why I was just asking.
But by the way, on the $100,000 house that you're telling me what's going to cost a taxpayer, is that with or without STAR? I never heard that answer.
Oh, I didn't do a with and without star calculation. That is I believe that's without star.
So that's not true either then, because most people have STAR. Okay, now we're on another page.
I'll go back and look at our star.
I know, you're brand new, so I'm just throwing these questions out. I never asked that question before.
just a question, how would a school district accumulate more than the allotted percentage for your fund balance?
The fund balance limit by law is 4%, and when you go through your audit at the end of the year, your auditors look at that, and the only other place where a district could accumulate money would be in other reserves. And if you remember on February 7th, we did a presentation that showed, our workman's compensation reserves,
Right.
Our tax certiorari reserves, and things like, and our debt service reserve. Money could be accumulated in those reserves, but it's been the practice of North Syracuse to only accumulate the amount of money that's absolutely needed for those future liabilities. And I think the district has prided itself on not overtaxing, squirreling away money.
Right.
But
how would a school district accumulate $5 million or five?
The only way you can accumulate that is to spend less than you levy. If over time, if you're spending less than you levy, that amount would build up. But
you're only allowed by the state to keep 2% of your.
Exactly. You're only allowed to keep 4%. 4%.
Yeah, 4%. Okay. Thank you.
But those are good questions, and I can look into the STAR impact of STAR, as well as the impact of a full-day kindergarten on a $100,000 home
In the
tax levy.
past, Don, I believe that when we do our $100,000 house, at least during Dr. Melvin's tenure and before, we have always put out the figures without STAR because we felt that was the fairest thing to do because STAR reimbursements have changed over the years. So you give people we have in the past given people the unvarnished worst case scenario, because people get STAR rebates at different rates, and the STAR rebate system has changed over the years since it was instituted.
Okay. Well, if there are no more questions on kindergarten, I was going to just take you through a quick presentation. Are there more? No? If there are no more questions on kindergarten, I'd like to take you through.
Sorry about that, Don. Go
That's
ahead.
okay. A quick presentation on the current economic trends. So what I started to say was that this is a presentation that any school district in central New York could give because our situation is not unique to North Syracuse. Many school districts are struggling in the current economic environment. And so I wanted to share with you some numbers so that we can be looking more than just this current budget cycle to future budget cycles as we do planning in connection with our strategic plan on a multi-year basis. So as I mentioned in our last presentation on the 27th, if you look at our revenues come from state aid and from the tax levy, and they represent about 97% of our revenues. If you look at our expenses, 77% of our expenses are salaries and benefits. So in order to put a multi-year model together, we have to make some assumptions about our revenues and our expenses. And so since our tax increase, although we got about our tax increase for funding operations was about 3.1%, I'm using a 3% growth rate for state aid. I'm making the assumption, although with all due respect to the gentleman that presented earlier, maybe the community will have some difficulty supporting it, but the tax cap calculation does say that we should ask for a 4.78% increase, and so I'm assuming we would get that for 2012. I'm assuming a 2% increase in the years beyond that, and then I'm projecting salary increases of 2% and benefit increases of 8%. The other factors that we have to consider is that our revenue from sales taxes will continue to decline under the new sharing agreement. We have a finite amount of fund balance available to us, and that our ability to spend fund balance in the future will be limited. And I want to also acknowledge one of the big factors in our state aid this year is that we got 2 years of building aid on our Smith Road project, and that's a little bit of the discrepancy that the gentleman pointed out earlier. Is that $1.8 million of our aid this year is going to go to debt service, and so that will not happen next year. We'll have a lesser amount of building aid next year, and so when you put these numbers in a multi-year model, this is what it looks like.
Don,
Sure.
Can I just say for the people out there who read in the paper and also assume, like you're assuming, that we're going to go out with a 4.78.
Yeah.
we haven't come to that yet.
Yeah, we have not come to that conclusion yet.
So
Yeah,
we need
good
to
point.
be clear with people that we still have a long discussion to go before we agree to whatever it is that
Yeah,
we're going to
good point. I apologize if I'm overstepping. That's exactly right. We're in the deliberation process, just looking at our initial budget information, and obviously the board has to
I'm just
deliberate.
saying that point because it was also reported in the paper that that's what we're going with, and people get upset. I mean, we haven't made that decision yet, and I don't want anybody out there to think that that's a done deal, because it's not.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I do want to add.
Can you repeat it, because Tony got to use the mic.
Okay.
Can you repeat her question?
Yeah, Tony's point was that the board is in the initial phases of the budget process, just kind of collecting information at this point. As Pat mentioned earlier, learning about the tax cap, and so no decision has been made at this point about either the final budget or the amount that would be levied to the public. So that, I think that was the point.
But I do want to add, correct, no decision has been made, but I believe this is the third or fourth budget meeting where we have been making presentations to the public. Our board meetings are online, so you can watch them, and we are attempting to be as open and as transparent with our information so that the community has a full picture of what is going on. And I think it's also important to note that, correct, the board has not made a decision on what we're going to move forward with, but let's be clear, whatever we move forward with, it's a difference between a $5 million cut and $10 million cut that we're going to be looking at, $10 million that we're going to be looking to cut. And we can give you the numbers, or we talked about it earlier, in terms of what that's going to look like as it relates to staff. So $5 million to $10 million gap, depending on what number we pick. Having said all of that, we are giving the board as much information as needed to make the appropriate decision around what we will then go out to the public with, to say that this is the position that the district has taken, and this is what we believe we need to support academics, sports, and everything else that I know the community, our parents, our students, our staff believe we will need to have in place to ensure increased student achievement.
Don, could you also talk to the difference between categorical aid and explain to the audience who might not be aware that in certain instances we are getting aid this year for money we spent last year?
Sure.
And also how certain of the monies that we get, we can't spend for operations. They have to, as you said, go to debt service or whatever, because I think people, Mr. Miller notwithstanding, don't understand that that money is money that has already been spent.
Well, the two biggest examples are BOCES aid and building aid. They're a big portion of our aid, and BOCES aid is paid based on the money you spent in the prior year at a BOCES aid ratio. Building aid is the same kind of concept. When a building project is approved, the state tells you over what period they're going to aid you, and they provide you the aid over that period. Because of when Smith Road was completed and whatnot, we got 2 years' worth of aid this year, but that'll go back to 1 year of aid next year. And the rest of our aid generally falls into this general aid or foundation aid category, and that's based on a number of factors. But BOCES aid and building aid are the two biggest examples of aid paid kind of after you've spent the money. Are there any other questions before I jump into this?
Yeah, there was one other thing I wanted to ask you to mention is over the past 2 years, I don't recall the exact figure about how much the state cut in our aid. Also, the gap elimination aid that was also cut. And so an increase in state aid this year doesn't even come near to the number or the amount of cuts that was made over the past 2 years. So it's a restoration, if nothing else.
If you exclude the $1.8 million of building aid that we got this year, our state aid did go up $1.4 million over last year. And that increase was completely offset by the fact that we lost the federal jobs money of about $3.2 million. So that's what kind of put us in the hole coming into this year from an aid perspective. And but the kind of the bad news is that the picture gets worse with the passage of time, and that's what I wanted to try to illustrate in this presentation tonight. Was that like other school districts, we're facing a fiscal crisis. If you look at the numbers that I've presented, we'll lose another 100,000. Now, first in the 2012-13 column, we're estimating, as I reported a couple of board meetings ago, that we'll have a fund balance of about $3.5 million. In the 13-14 column, I try to show you some of the changes in our revenues. We're going to lose another $100,000 worth of sales tax. We're going to not use $540,000 of debt service funds because we won't have those funds to use. In the 12-13 year, we're talking about using $600,000 worth of fund balance. We won't be able to do that in the 13-14 year. And then there's the $950,000 worth of building aid. It's going to go down from $1.8 million in the 12-13 year to $950,000 in the 13-14 year. Our state aid will probably increase, I'm estimating, by 3%, and our tax levy could increase by as much as 2% with the taxpayers' support. But our revenues would only increase about $762,000 in the 13-14 year, while our expenses, payroll and benefits, would increase by $4.6 million. $1.4 million for payroll and $3.2 million for benefits. So we would have a net change in our revenues versus expenditures for the 13-14 year of $3.8 million, which would mean we'd spend our entire fund balance by the end of the 13-14 year. If those trends continue, modest increases in state aid, modest increases in the levy, with our current increases in payroll and benefits, we will go another $2 million in the hole in the 14-15 year, additional $2.2 million in the 15-16 year, an additional $2.4 million in the 16-17 year. So the bottom line is that the district needs to fundamentally change our economic situation, because we're getting to a point where our expenses are growing faster than our revenues. If you add to that the effects of full-day kindergarten that we spoke about earlier, you can see that the $3.5 million fund balance as the first line here in the 12-13 year, the net change due to economic trends that I just laid out for you, the 3.8, the 2 million, the 2.6, and the 2.4, you add in the kindergarten impact, and the district basically goes from a fund balance of $3.5 million to a deficit of $10.1 million by the end of the 16-17 year. And so this trend is the same trend that many districts across central New York are experiencing, and the less affluent districts will experience the hardships first, but ultimately everybody will succumb to the same economic equation.
Right, because everybody is being forced to cut positions and programs and use up their fund balance.
Yep.
So even school districts that have more programs to cut and more fund balance to lose, sooner or later they're going to have spent all their fund balance and not be able to cut it.
That's correct. And so in summary, if somehow we're successful in obtaining voter approval for a 4.7% increase this year, we'll still need to cut $5.8 million. While the full-day kindergarten has a positive impact in the first year, it's going to require additional or deeper cuts in subsequent years. We need both an increase in revenues and further expense reductions over the next 5 years. And we're not going to be, this isn't about doing more with less. This is about fundamentally changing the way we execute our mission. We have to do things differently. And these economics are unquestionable. And we've just got to do everything we can to understand them, and then everything we can to address them through both revenue changes and as well as further expense reductions.
And Don, could you talk to the cycles for ERS and TRS and how those contribution rates are funded?
Yes, that's a very good point. As a matter of fact, what the state tries to do is they try to look at those things over a 5-year period, so that you don't have the year-to-year volatility of the stock market. And so, as the gentleman mentioned earlier, we probably have the stock market's bounced back to rates where it was in 2008, I believe, and so that's good news. And so our ERS and our TRS rates that we're funding still are up, materially. TRS up over almost 50% over the last 3 years, and ERS over 90% up over the last 3 years. But if the market continues to recover, those required contribution rates will gradually come down. And what they do is they establish the rates using a 5-year blended rate so that you don't have the year-to-year volatility. But right now we're on the high end of the cycle, so our funding requirements are high. The only thing I will say about ERS and TRS is they're fully funded plans, and the assets are managed well. And so I'm confident as the stock market recovers, we will see some improvement in our retirement costs.
Yeah, I just want it to be understood that we are working with this 5-year period. And at the beginning of that 5-year period, things were at the lowest point that they had been at. We're still trying to make up that ground in terms of the contributions that are defined for this 5-year period, which began last year?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Don, during the course of the next few weeks, in your summary, you talk about getting support for the tax cap at 4.78, and how if that were the level of support, we'd still have to cut $5.8 million. Could you, and again, during the course of the next few weeks, when we talk about this kind of a summary, could we talk about, what a 1% difference in that tax rate, how that would affect what we would have to cut? For example, say if we were to propose a 3.78, how would that relate to what would have to be?
Sure, and as a matter of fact, in the February 27th presentation, one of the slides was a slide that showed the tax rate increase, the amount of effect on the levy, and what the amount of cuts would be, and then also the impact in terms of a $100,000 home in terms of their tax increase. And so I can bring that slide back every week and show that weekly, if that would be helpful.
Because eventually, those are, that's the kind of, when we talk about what the potential cuts are, and we talk about what we may or may not be able to support as a group relative to a tax increase, it'd be nice to know that number, because no matter what we do, as far as a tax increase or a 0% tax, it's going to relate into a cut of expenses. So that'd be a good idea. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe when we looked at the $100,000 house that we ever looked at it relative to equating STAR with that. I believe it was always.
Yeah.
I believe it was always the number without STAR. So.
Right.
Because there's different people that get different levels, and it was hard to.
I know.
It was hard to do that. So
We need to say that, though.
Well, the other thing I think that we need to clarify is when we presented the 4.78%, we didn't present it as a tax increase. We presented it as the fact that the 2% cap is not really a 2% cap, because certain things like the excess of the TRS and ERS benefits and tax certiorari, which is determined by us, and other things that are beyond our control. When you get approval for a mortgage and when you get approval to build a building, the voters have already voted to make those contributions. To hold them outside the cap is punitive because the voters have already approved those expenditures. So legally, according to the way the legislature passed the cap, the maximum that we can increase taxes is 4.78% and be within the terms of the laws that were passed in terms of this cap. And I think when the legislature, God bless them, wrote this law, they made it very difficult for municipalities and counties and school districts to explain this to the layperson. They said, we have a 2% cap. Why, are you saying that you can legally raise our taxes 4.78% and still be fiscally responsible and blah, blah, blah? And the fact is that that's the reason why, because there are things that are outside that 2%.
But I think I acknowledge that this is pretty complicated stuff, and that I think what we're committed to doing is circling back and sharing information with the community, continuing a dialogue where we're constantly hearing their concerns and providing more information. So I'm committed to if people were able to go back and look at the February 27th presentation that's out on our website, look at the listen to the presentation, the film on the website. I'd be happy to answer any questions and certainly represent any information that anybody needed us to in order to make them at least understand it. They might not agree with it, but we aspire to make sure everybody at least understands the financial facts.
Don, I have one last question.
Sure, Pat.
And that is last year when they caught our money that they were giving us, they said that we could anticipate 4% this year. Is there any indication as to we could anticipate a 2% increase from the state next year? Is there any...
At this stage of the game, there's no indication as to what our 13, 14 state aid will be. One of the other things about the infamous 4% increase we were supposed to get is that, remember, there's $250 million being held by the state for competitive grants. That's a significant amount of money, and we're lobbying with our legislators, and we did meet with Don Miller and others, to ask that competitive grant money be converted into just regular foundation aid and distributed to districts based on need. And if we get that aid, that could be as much as $750,000 for the North Syracuse Central School District, and that would certainly help us in the cause of closing the gap here.
Any other questions on this issue?
Yeah, I have one. Later on, I don't. Not today, of course. We got enough to do. Can you talk a little bit about that $250 million in state, the state aid? I'm talking about that the Rick Timms presentation. I think that kind of makes what we're dealing with as far as the state aid a little bit clearer to the public. I think that's probably something maybe in some
Sure.
sort of format in another board meeting might be a good idea.
Sure.
Because I know I've had to see it a few times in order to even understand the gist of it. But I think it does help, and I think that's probably the clearest way to look at the state budget as far as education is concerned.
Yeah, I think the central theme that people should keep in mind is that the districts that are most dependent on state aid are hurt the most when that aid is cut. And we've all heard about the campaign for fiscal equity, where there's a real concern that the low wealth districts are not getting their fair share of the state aid, and that's what Rick Timms has presented. And I'd be happy to pull some of that information together and share it at a later meeting.
Yeah. I'll wait until comments.
The participation in government students, come on up. We'll sign your forms for you.
You and your daughter getting your library of North
Come on up. Any one of us can sign for you.
Sure.
Any one of us can sign for you.
Oh, really seriously, that's good. Anybody around the table?
Oh, it's on the other side.
Over here.
I'm telling you.
Thank you.
Don't bite.
How are you?
Hi there, how are you?
You can sign. You can sign.
Good to see you, buddy. Hi.
Had a great time.
What'd you think? Learn anything?
There you go.
Hopefully we'll be open next week, so we'll see us all.
You can leave, yes. That's why we're letting you sign so you can escape and make it home.
Where are you going to go to school afterwards? Are you?
Hi.
Where are you going to be? Oh, there you go. Yes, they're going to all have to be required to have that staff knowledge.
Mike, do you need
God bless you. honey. Good luck to you.
Drive carefully.
I know, kids.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
We get them all, Doc.
Oh, no. What's your name, dear?
Hi, how you doing?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
No, that's your teacher.
So you need a friction pen.
Yeah, that's the one.
Thanks for coming. How are you?
Anybody graduate?
Thank you.
So proud of you.
I wonder what they're going to say about you when you're gone.
How is Garden?
Oh, man. It's been a tough freaking crowd, man. Come on.
Thank you, dear. Good luck to you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So got kids coming? Another one?
There's a lot of people.
Hi, Shelby. How are ya? Good.
I think this freaking Des Moines students have to stay for the whole night.
I think so.
Oh, yeah. Change the time. Cutting out too quick on me.
I'll worry about a 3-year plug it's going to come out. There you go.
Plug on there. Does it look like it's going to fall out?
Check that.
It's room now. It's been like that since the beginning of the night. Kindergarten teacher, don't worry about it.
Yeah, it looked okay earlier, but.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, great.
Let's see if I can increase the time.
Is that showing us?
Hey, Michael.
What's that?
Yeah.
That's us.
How can I increase the amount of time until it kicks out to rest? Can you do that? Oh, really? So because it keeps going to. Well, no, it's not kicking me out. It just keeps going to my screen where I got to lock out. You know what I mean? How can I increase that time?
It takes time to go down.
Is that it? Auto lock, 2 minutes?
Does the board have a preference in the order in which they see the presentations, or can we just queue them up?
I can't get on.
Yes.
Okay.
You're where, Michael? Take this. That's good.
Thank you.
Michael, here.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michael.
So, Chris, if you're ready, Chris Nelson.
Just give us a couple of seconds, okay?
Yeah. Well, did you get it there? How did you get it?
It's
Get
on.
back. Get back up.
You should be able to go back on as long as Michael put the password in for you.
Does she need the password?
Do you need the password again? Oh.
I don't know what I'm doing.
You want to Here, we'll get you. There you go. See if you can authenticate.
I did.
Wait, it's authenticating. There you go. She's good. Just wait for Dr. Dice to return.
She's on there?
Yeah, she's good. Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
I don't know about you, Michael.
We're just waiting for Dr. Dice.
Just wait for Dr.
Okay. Now what? Who's going to do first?
Technology.
Oh. Oh.
I could sing.
I neither sing nor dance. So
Neither sing nor dance. Neither can I. That's the problem.
Exactly.
You're offline?
No, I'm all right here.
Yeah. Go out, come back again. Go off. I know that. Go off and come back again. That's what I did.
Much less intrusive.
Yeah, you like that.
And you know me, I didn't like that big freaking thing talking like this.
Does she realize we're waiting for her?
Yeah, she's okay, you can start, Chris.
Okay, sounds good. I'd like to thank Don just to start with in terms of a new format this year. So hopefully the way that the information is presented gives us a lot more ways of looking at the budget. As you take a look at the first slide, this depicts a graphical representation of the technology budget. Again, as you go through the pie chart, you can see that the largest chunk is in staffing. So support salaries and teaching assistants make up probably about 2/3 of our salary, with the remaining components added up to about a third represent our hardware and software. Our previous conversation, I think Sandy had indicated this, that some of our funding is funding that we receive revenue on. Both our state-aided computer hardware and software are those codes that do that. So I don't remember the exact ratio, but almost dollar for dollar that we put in, we receive some revenue the following year. So again, looking at a year-to-year representation in terms of changes from last year to the proposed budget, you can see that last year's budget totaled just over $1 million. With adjustments, we're just under $1 million in regards to investment in technology codes. In terms of variances, basically, the two pieces to note in our budget this year. First is the salary adjustments. Again, if you take a look at the concessions and recent contracts for our staffing, we were decreased just about 1.5, 1.8, looks like listed there. And then both our hardware and software budgets are dependent on an aid ratio based on a per pupil formula. So seeing that our enrollment has decreased, the projected aid and, of course, the funding for those particular codes has also decreased.
What about the half-day kindergarten? How do they judge that? If it was full day, would you give them more money?
Full day kindergarten?
The technology monies, is that on the amount of students, but is it counting the half-day student, or is it counting? Hell, I don't care who answers that.
It's based on the number of students, not the average daily attendance.
So in other words, a half-day kindergarten against
the same as a child in 12th grade. We don't only have that.
Okay, even if it's half-day kindergarten, all-day kindergarten.
Right, so our total enrollment's just under 9,200. It would still be the same amount of students if they were to go full day. So it would be the same amount of aid. Savings and overall opportunities. Again, technology continues to improve the way that we do business in the district. Again, the productivity and the efficiency with the investment of technology will continue to allow us to reduce costs in other areas throughout the organization. And again, we could go through many examples of how technology has kind of streamlined our ability to communicate, ability to reach outside campus, to be able to go through and improve the amount of communication that we have just in general, the volume of information that's been able to process, and it's been direct ratio to the technology that we've been working with. So although there are not a lot of direct savings, I think the opportunities with the investment are the bigger return on investment here. Questions on the technology aspect? You good? All right, let's shift over to the library services. Library services constitutes the 10 libraries that we have on campus. We have basically a small budget in regards to supplies and contracted services that equal somewhere around $12,500. No change at all. Basically, these funds are used to maintain collections, being able to make sure that we have replacement books and those types of things for the resources that we provide in each of our buildings. So no immediate changes in this code. Again, when you take a look at opportunities and savings, again, not a very large code, but you want to remind the board that today's libraries are much different than in years past in terms of their goals and their initiatives. As students continue to use technology to access research, self-directed learning and creativity and empowerment are large goals of the program, and the funding that we provide for our libraries allow for the growth of that throughout the grade levels. Again, as we take a look at the type of content that we provide, we see a continued shift from print resources to digital resources. And again, that's allows us to improve our circulation, be able to provide these resources off campus, at a much better return on investment than if we were to continue to stay wedded to a book environment. So in summary, again, technology is a cornerstone of everyone's lives. It allows our students to become more productive, both in their current learnings, but provides them for 21st century learning future in regards to growing up into a more technological age. Technology also impacts our staff and the way that teachers offer their instruction, as well as being able to assist the diversity of the learners that we have on our campus. So both through the library and the technology areas, that's our summary. Other questions, thoughts?
Right now, our state-aided computer hardware comes from BOCES leases?
No, in a few weeks we'll be presenting the BOCES budget. This is direct aid to the district.
Okay.
You're right, Sandy, when we purchase BOCES services, we receive aid on those as
Right.
well. So there's a ratio, I think it's $24.25, somewhere, $24.20 that the state gives directly to the district per pupil. And that's how that's derived.
And that's over and above our leases?
That's correct, yes.
Through BOCES or whatever, okay.
Yep.
I have a question. So the library budget does this include all computers, networking, anything related to that in the libraries, or is that budget just books? I mean, what is that?
The $13,000 or $12,500 is strictly for services within the library, not technology. So any addition of the network or technology for library services will be included in the technology budget.
Okay, so databases and things like that would be...
Actually, the content is purchased through school library services at BOCES. So when we review the budget for the BOCES, we'll see that there's the digital resources for there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Can I make a crisp comment?
Sorry, there's a light.
I like to praise the librarians. 2 years ago, the music program in our elementary schools was reduced in half. And our librarians picked up the pieces, and they've done a magnificent job. The reason is, unlike music and art and phys ed, there's one librarian for each school. And the larger schools obviously have more classes, so they get more library classes. They have stepped up to the plate. Some of these librarians get a free period and a lunch, and that's it. Whereas 2 years ago, the librarians had a lot of time to work with teachers on research projects, but I can't say enough about the librarians because they really have picked it up. So you should be congratulated if you're a librarian, but fantastic people that, again, because of reduction in economic trends, people step up to the plate, and the librarians stepped up to the plate.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Chris, thank you.
Okay. Bless you. God bless you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. Let's see. There we go. Okay. Again, when we go through the general fund part of the budget, the whole entire general fund budget actually is contractual and pretty much state mandated. So as we go through this, keep in mind when we look at this, everything here is generated through student need. So as we look at the special education budget, the majority of it really is salaries and contractual agreements that we have with the staff. And then as you go down and you really look through what we're looking at, overall, in a $10 million budget, we're just up 0.6%, which is pretty good considering our size. And then just some of the things that we looked at is that where the increases are. And this slide kind of explains that we had it just due to increases in FTEs, additional credit hours, tenure. We moved some people back and forth through the grants. And the equipment budget was just due to a decrease, which was budgetary, being placed into health and safety to allow for more flexibility. Psychological services. Again, professional salaries drive this part of the budget. The decrease here was, again, we had a psychologist that we shifted in part of the salary into the federal grant, and that's where you see that. And then the extra pay that you see here is the 10 days that they work during the summer to maintain our compliance, CSE meetings, evaluations. We have 4 days of the CSE, so they work during the summer. God bless you. Our social workers have maintained the same for the last couple years. This is new to us this year after Steve Nevins retired, so we've pretty much kept this the same. And again, there really were no significant changes for social workers. So at this particular time, and again, I think, every year when we get to this point, we're not showing you any additional savings just yet. Again, we'll come as we go through annual reviews, we look to see what student needs are, and then we adjust our programming based upon student need. So a couple weeks from now, we'll be able to have more information that would generate our budget a little bit more specifically based upon what comes out of annual reviews. But we always are looking at our program to see how we can keep it really down to the budget so that we're still providing our students everything that they need. And because of that, we work pretty collaboratively with district and building level administration so that we can monitor our programs and utilize staff appropriately. Any questions with that?
I just have one question about how many students do we service in this department?
About 1,400.
About 14.
Mm-hmm.
And Val, just for people who may not understand, can you talk about where the funding comes from, the federal grants and the school age and the whatever?
Well, I know that we're going to do, when we're going to do federal grants.
Just a once-over, like.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Just the sources,
Yep,
so
absolutely.
people understand.
We get monies through our 611, 619, which is a supplemental grant so that we get extra monies from the state based upon number of students that we have in outside programming so that we are able to use monies there to also help support our funding. So that's why when I talked about other grants, we usually get about $2 million on that side from the federal side, which does not impact the general fund at all. So we're able to help offset the cost of the general fund. And we're going to present that at another time. Any other questions or concerns for special education? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Stan, do you want to come up and do professional development?
Good evening.
Good evening, Stanley.
This is one of the areas that I oversee, which is professional development. And as you can see from the graphic, over a quarter of what we do is devoted to in-service extra pay, which is part of the obligation that we have to meet the 175-hour teacher certification. In addition, we bank money with BOCES to provide substitute teacher reimbursement during our scoring process. We also are obligated as a large school district to provide the support to BOCES for these activities. Now, something that's different this year in the BOCES budget, as in years past, in the past we would have to pay per workshop fee. This year we paid no per workshop fees. All the fees were absorbed by BOCES. We have a small amount put aside for contractual obligations. That would be if we have to contract with an outside service provider. And then a small amount for supplies and materials that primarily are used for the scoring process. Taking a look at our budget, we did not show any increase going into the next year. In fact, in the weeks to come, I'll be sharing with you some significant reductions in certain areas of this budget. So what are we doing with professional development? As you know, it's a cornerstone of some of the things that we do. We want to make sure that our staff is up to speed with their skills and their knowledge of instruction. And so even with that, we're going to remain constant for the next year. Financial support for these activities come from a variety of sources, not just from the general fund, but from Title I and 2A, Race to the Top, school improvement grants, and we have received this year an AFT and NYSET grant that allowed us to develop the teacher evaluation system. Activities that were targeted this year primarily because of the Race to the Top, teaching standards, Common Core learning standards, lead teacher or lead evaluator training, both in teacher evaluation and principal evaluation, network team training, data analysis, teacher and principal evaluation training, and then computer technology training. And so what are we going to take a look at? And we've actually begun to look at this. For the coming year, we want to really target and focus our staff development. We're going to change our way of operating, looking at more school-based learning opportunities and job-embedded staff development. Take advantage more of before and after school training opportunities. And that would be reducing workday costs, because when you take a look at what we have to do if we're pulling teachers out of the classroom, then we incur costs for substitute teachers. We'll take more advantage of the BOCES CIA&A services, utilization of digital technology, that's coming. Maximum use of school improvement money. We've applied for significant grants for our title schools that are in need of improvement. We'll maximize our Title I and Title II funds. Again, reduction of workday workshops and reduction of summer professional development. And so in conclusion, we need to keep in mind that there are some things that are driving our staff development. And again, we need to keep our staff up to date with the latest techniques, but there's a lot going on with the state. And so we have the state and federal requirements for Race to the Top that focuses on teacher evaluation and instructional improvement. Also, we have a strategic action plan that will be coming, and as that evolves, I know that there are areas that Dr. Dice would like us to concentrate on. We have Common Core learning standards from Race to the Top. As you know, the APPR, data analysis to inform instruction and identify growth. We have assessment benchmarking, student learning objectives, which I'll be sharing with you soon. It's a new way of looking at assessment. Diversity training, instructional practices, and meeting the needs of diverse learners. Those would be the students who are at risk. And so we recognize that with workshops being offered to the school day, we do incur significant substitute teacher costs. And we're going to modify our practices and look for ways to reduce this cost. And we'll continue to honor our contractual obligations, that's important, by providing staff with opportunities to achieve the 175 hours of professional development. And there you have it. Yes?
Are you not using anything from the teaching center, Central Teaching Center? Are you not using any of their
we
services?
do, and where you see that, we don't have to contribute money in that sense, but where you see that in the in-service pay, that's where that comes into play. So each time for each hour spent at the teacher center with staff, we pay an hourly rate to the staff for in-service training.
I don't understand. I thought you were doing after school. This is what they're doing.
Yeah, that's after
So how do you
school.
pay for that? They don't. There's no.
If
charge.
a teacher attends that kind of workshop after school hours,
Okay, then you pay her to go, or him to go.
they,
Oh, it is.
they get in-service credit pay to a certain level.
You know about all the programs, of course.
Yes,
There.
we do. We
Okay.
get the catalog.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then NYSET offers a tremendous amount of staff development as well.
Absolutely great.
Really good quality.
Same building.
I am so pleased with this report, Stan and Alicia. I know Alicia worked on this hard, a great deal. What I like about it is that you have focused your instruction in a certain number of areas, which we needed to do in the school district years ago, and that you're looking at ways of doing it other than after school after school. So you both should be commended, both you and Alicia, for the work on this, and continue the great work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just
Sandy?
want to ask if we will, with the resources that we have, be able to meet the needs of the new initiatives and have sufficient resources to target those things and to support instruction in the way that we're.
I believe that we do. We have 3 outstanding professional developers that are paid for through the Title II-A grant. In addition, Alicia has become a state and being recognized throughout not only New York State but around the country as lead evaluator trainer. We also have our consultant teachers that are working hard at this, as well as some other support people that have been trained through NYSET. So I think we can do the work. We're also relying on some of the expertise at BOCES now. We just rolled out a 114 teachers being trained in Common Core learning standards, and that was headed up by a BOCES project, a cooperative project with us. So I think we can do it. And I see, because of our concentrating on a narrower focus, that we can do a really high quality job.
Will this allow us, as we go through the evaluation process, to do some proscriptive professional development?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think most of these that we are doing, other than and working with the schools in need of improvement, they're proactive, and they're we're getting ahead of it. In fact, John Corolla shared with us not long ago, going to Albany and to Washington, D.C. and some other places, that in the teacher evaluation system, we're way ahead of most districts, both with the training and the implementation. So I think we're doing a good job with it.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam.
Keisha.
All right.
Thank you.
This presentation is about the budget that I oversee. Really is just more for memberships, travel, professional material supplies, and defraying the cost for a few teachers to attend math conferences. So I just offer that first to then share with you really kind of the bigger picture in terms of my responsibilities as it relates to the budget process. And I wanted to kind of, celebrate the work we've done, at least in the last 6 years that I've been here, and that is ensuring a path of learning for students that guarantees them success, college, and career readiness. And so our goals have been evidenced by 2/3, at least, have reached the pre-calculus level before graduating. About 1/3 of our students are supported by courses that allow them to achieve or recover their 3rd credit in math that is required to graduate. And in addition to that, we have about 20% of our students take advanced placement courses that we offer in calculus, statistics, and computer programming. And having said that, I'm offering you kind of in the process that I followed to present to you recommendations for some cost savings measures as I reviewed the program. And our priorities have been in the past, again, 6 years, to pay attention to the advanced designation rate. And in order to do that, the path for students is algebra, geometry, and that should say algebra 2 and trigonometry. And so that has always been kind of the movement toward the on-track courses, if you will, that lead to the advanced designation diploma. Additionally, the second area of focus that we build our program around is to ensure that all of our students, in fact, meet the Algebra Regents requirement and earn their 3 credits of math. And the third area is always to support students who have a high interest in math and to allow them to pursue advanced placement courses in math and computer programming. So those are the priority areas by which I then used to look at where do we begin this process. So my first opportunity to look at the budget is always kind of to say those courses that have declining enrollment. And so recommendations, one area is to eliminate the SAT prep course. We offer opportunities for students to attend Saturday classes, and we've reduced that over the last couple of years. So that's one specific course. The other areas we looked at in terms of enrollment, certainly making those numbers at 28, 29, 30 on average for the following courses. And what you see there, college algebra, pre-calculus, algebra 2, trig, geometry, and algebra. There are some sections that can be reduced, and that, of course, impacts class size. And the other recommendation is that we have 6 of our computer electives to alternate scheduling them in every other year. So the electives are not available, all electives are not available every year, but they are available to students in the course of their high school years of the 3 years that they're there. Jackie.
When you're talking about eliminating the SAT prep course, are you talking about eliminating, do you have more than one, or is it just completely eliminating them?
I think right now we have one section.
Mm-hmm. What?
Eliminating it, yes.
And what, is it declining enrollment in that, or is there less people? What? I just was wondering why you were thinking about eliminating that.
Yep, I think because so few students, in all honesty, there are lots of options for kids to prepare for the SATs. Online opportunities, there are lots, I don't want to say lots, but there are additional ways outside of school that kids can prepare to take the SATs. So for the 20 students that take this course, when we are looking at our priority areas of advanced designation, third credit in math, and the advanced placement courses, it doesn't support our program goals.
Okay. Do the kids that want to prepare for the SAT, are these options known to them as far as, and it doesn't cost them anything to take the online prep course or anything like that?
I don't know specifically, but my guess is yes. I don't have children myself. Those of you that do, Mike, you want to answer? No?
Well, let me add. So once again, these presentations are to say that these are recommendations that we're making, and what we ended up doing, which I was going to say this at the end, was we've sat down as a team and met with all of the directors, and as you can see, the presentations are pretty similar in terms of the format, and they put forth the summary and conclusion that is summarizing some of their recommendations around possible savings. So if we were going to eliminate that course, then we would put a plan in place to ensure that we were informing the students and families of the various opportunities available to them to still receive support for taking the SATs, as well as whether or not there's cost for some and not for others. So that information would be shared with the students. It wouldn't be a matter of where we kind of just eliminated the course and then let them have to figure it out for themselves.
And that's during the school day, and Dr. Dice is right. We offer a Saturday review class as well that we're not.
Okay, I just wasn't aware of what was in place besides just elimination, because that's all I saw on our backup material.
And I would imagine that with the alternating computer electives, that would also, you have to go through guidance and scheduling and whatever to...
And figure out which courses match up best.
Plotting out their
scheduling for the 4 years.
To get them where they need to be at the right time.
Yes.
Yeah, any child that has registered for the SAT, there's not only computer application, but I get on my daughter's computer SAT question of the day every single day that's sent. So any child that does register, they start populating and sending you information digitally right at your phone.
Okay, so they get notification once they sign up for the SAT. They get a lot of options as far as being able to prepare. I just want to make sure it gets on the film. Thank you, Mr. Bowles.
What does that cost, that course? What does it
It's
cost?
one section of a teacher's salary. We don't charge for it.
No. What does it cost if you eliminate? What will that save? How much? 16. Okay.
It would probably save them.
Okay.
Well, I'm not advocating either way. I'm just saying, I was just curious about,
Sure.
Just making sure the kids had
16.
prep course.
Okay.
Other questions about math before we move on? The other area that I oversee, business and career education. And again, the process is similar, although you know that from the presentation the business department shared with you last week, the goals of their program are to meet the college-bound and those seeking entry-level employment. And the variety of courses that we offer students in the kind of the value-added component of what the business department and the students and the staff within that department offer both the school, CNS High School, the junior high, and the community. And I think it's different than math in the last presentation. So having said that, we certainly are continuing with being, current in 21st century with the courses that we're offering. We're proud of our CTE endorsement work that students can earn on their diplomas. We do have articulation agreements for up to 18 college credit hours. And again, the partnerships that this department promotes within the school and outside community certainly is an asset. So again, the same process I followed was to say, so these are our priority areas, and that is always to continue to support the CTE endorsement path, a variety of programs for students earning a concentration in business, and to promote student leadership within and outside the school system. And so having said that, again, the areas to consider in this process, when we look, last year, we reduced the Career Center at both CNS and the junior high. We had one full-time person at each, and we reduced it in half. And so that is a shared, kind of not shared by one person, but it's this reduction recommendation for consideration, eliminate the Career Center at the junior high, is a 0.4 current position. But this recommendation does not include the Career Center at CNS, and that is a 0.6 position. Same kind of logic was looking at courses with low enrollment, and these, again, are the following courses you see here. And the third same kind of recommendation is to look at those courses that we could schedule opposite each other every other year.
Alicia, I'd just like to make a comment about the elimination of the Career Center at the junior high. Although I fully understand the choices that we have to make, I think it's a shame that we're not starting as young as the junior high to prepare kids for that. Because there's kids that know as early as the junior high that, they need a career. They need to start looking at that. And, they feel defeated before they even get out of the junior high if they don't feel like they have any prospects there. So it's a shame. Believe me, I understand it, but it's a shame. It's sad, very sad. And I think we're doing a disservice to a lot of kids in that process.
Sure, I agree. Other questions? Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you.
Next.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, we can, these are basically all the business office areas. That includes the purchasing function, the business office that administers all the accounting programs and the auditing and that sort of thing are included within this. You'll see the bulk of the cost comes from the salaries, and the contractual items include the cost of different outside agencies that we use to administer some of the things that we do that we don't have the expertise, such as our 403B plans and certain things that we do with borrowing of money that we need to hire experts to oversee that function. The instructional salaries are just down a little bit, and that is the change in face of the individual who's involved in the business in the assistant superintendent's office. The others you'll see are not significant changes except the $12,700 reduction in the contractual, and that's some things that we think we can do. Our estimates in the past may have been a little bit high, and I feel comfortable in dropping those estimates for next year. Support service salaries, really the longevity increases are why you see any change there at all. Certain people after so many years in the clerical unit and also in the middle manager's unit get an increase based on how many years they've been here. The auditors, I've reduced my projection. Basically, I thought I had a little bit more in there for internal audit than we seem to be spending. And the other area of all other is just our conference attendance. I added a little bit there. We have a new assistant superintendent, and there's a very important conference for the purchasing official that we've not allowed our man to go to in the last 2 years. And I really think that we stand a chance of missing something that could easily save us the cost of that conference. So Debt service, this is all our debt service that we pay for everything that we've borrowed for capital cost, as well as our revenue anticipation note, which is money that we borrow each year to get us through the cash flow short times during the summertime until the total flow of state aid has started in the end of September and the tax flow has started arriving also. You'll see the top two lines, they basically offset one another, and that is our debt service on our bonds. The bond schedule is very similar from one year to the next on the bonds. And the third item is our first payment on principal for the Smith Road project, and that we'll be paying next June when we close out the ban and convert it to a bond. The interest, again, on the construction for Smith Road is quite similar to what it has been. We've lowered the rate just a little bit as our projection. It's still a very low rate, but we were able to even drop it lower. The principal on the buses and the interest on the buses, just the buses that we have purchased in the last 5 years were a little more expensive than the buses just prior to that. I think they changed something in the requirements for the engines with the extra, was it ultra low sulfur diesel? Yeah. And so some of the cost went up, and you'll see that reflected there. So net, our interest or our whole debt services increased about at $1.2 million, and a lot of that will come back to us in that additional $900,000 that Don mentioned in the Smith Road building aid. I think I've touched on everything here before I got to look at my notes. So. I'll go forward. Benefits. This is, as you all know, this is one of the largest areas in our budget, and each one of these is based on the change in the number of individuals involved and the salaries for those individuals, as well as the rate changes that come from the state or the projected rate changes for the health cost. Employees' retirement system is up, and again, it's not just the rate that increases, but the salary base increases also. If we have any salary increases at all in the whole district, they affect either the teacher's retirement system base or the base for the employees' retirement system. Social Security is, again, just a figure based on the salaries. Occasionally, we will, the grants that we receive haven't increased on a regular basis. So what happens is some of the salaries, when the grant salaries increase, they can't always absorb the additional benefits. So we have to pay for some of those benefits in the general fund. Unemployment insurance, this is a figure that right there is pretty close to what we're projecting we will spend this year. Yes.
You're showing a reduction of $172,000. You seem counterintuitive.
Well, last year we budgeted to accommodate all the people that we laid off during the end of June, July period for them to collect unemployment insurance. This figure here is very close to what I projected. I just went through the projection today, and I got the figures in from the end of February. And so that gives me close to a little bit over $400,000 that I project to spend this year. But it doesn't include any positions that we might cut. So if we make any cuts from here forward, we have to add to that cost of unemployment to accommodate for that.
So you're not accounting. This is okay.
Right.
That's why I thought it was counting.
The health insurance, you can see, is up about 9.9%. At this point, our largest program has a projection of going up about 9% on the rate. Each month, I adjust that based on the rate projection that I receive from POMCO, and then whatever other information that I have that they don't have. and that is the most recent projection. I'll have another one in about 10 or 12 days. So it's possible that will come down a little bit. I certainly hope it doesn't go up at all. Dental insurance is very close from one year to the next. It really doesn't vary too much, although it eventually will start to drop down based on the fewer employees. So it has come down a little bit in the last few years. And then all other, this just includes some money for, there's a disability program that certain unions have bargained for that's in their contract, and then there's some money for what they call compensated absences. When someone retires, they get paid for their so many dollars for their sick day, depending on what union they're in. The opportunities for savings. Really, the only opportunity I see here is if the rates change at all on the health insurance, the projection for what will happen, and then also to reduce the number of people that are covered. Beyond that, there's very little that I can see as an opportunity to change any of those numbers. We have also, we instituted a program to urge people as strongly as we can to use generics more, and also to promote the use of what they call therapeutic alternatives. That helps to reduce our drug cost, and we've had that in place really since September, so we've gotten some savings from it, but I think that as time goes on, once a person starts to use a therapeutic alternative, then they're much more open to using it on a second drug. So I think that will continually give us some additional savings, but it's very difficult to know ahead of time how much that will be. And then we also offer some alternatives, lower cost programs that you may remember we started for people who are over 65 and receiving their benefits as a retiree. And we've had about 100 people move into that program. And as time goes on, I anticipate more people moving in. So each time that happens, we save a few $1,000s in each of those individuals. Okay. Summary conclusion. The change in the number of covered employees really could reduce our benefit costs significantly. There may be some rates that will come down, although I think it would be primarily in the health insurance. And then the other items are really unlikely to change prior to our budget vote. Are there questions that I could?
How many people are in this department? How many people are employed in this department?
In the business office, and there are, I'm going to count on my fingers. 1, 2. There are 11 individuals, and then a couple of positions that show up there, which is a claims auditor, which is part-time, and a treasurer for the Student Activities Fund, which is also like a stipend.
Bless you. Oh, my. We need the heat turned on.
I'll talk to the building manager.
I know that other business manager used to do that, turn the heat on. This one here don't.
Any other questions?
We gotta save money.
Tony?
I know, we are saving money, I can tell you that.
You're welcome.
Yep, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you. Bring me a blanket next week. Who's next?
Gotta be athletics. We're running out
Okay.
of people.
Save the best for last.
Yay!
There you go.
Is there somebody after Tom?
No, I think that's it.
He's waited for the last
Tom
round
just
up
get it.
here. Is this your swan song?
I'm just going to
Mr.
tell you, this is my last time. Okay? Marlene and I have been saying that right along. This is our last time for this. This is our last time for that. Before I begin, I want to thank you for what you did for the 2 young students tonight. Both of them are outstanding students. Both of them I do know. Obviously, I know Bree probably a little bit better than I knew Jacqueline. I don't think you realize how much notoriety Bree has brought to this district in the last 3 or 4 years. She is the most talked about and celebrated athlete in the area. Very, very tremendous amount of positive comments about her. And I'm going to tell you something. She has represented this district very, very well, and it's something to be proud of, as that both kids have done. She is by far the best athlete I have ever been associated with in my 43 years of education. And I've been in athletics all 43 years. So I just want to thank you, because that was outstanding, because she is one special student. And that's almost like once in a lifetime
She
that
is
you're
a
going to see somebody like
once-in-a-lifetime
that.
athlete.
Absolutely no question about it. All right, I guess I got to get on with this thing so I don't stay up all night. Athletics, it's pretty self-explanatory there. The bulk is salaries and everything else. The coaching salaries probably should stay about the same. There shouldn't be too much variance because they've been on a freeze for the last 3 years. Going down through officials, their contract is up a little bit, but Section 3 is going to negotiate with the officials, and we're looking at, they've got, hopefully give a little bit, and there's been some ongoing talks there. I upped the supply budget this year because basically I slashed it this past year, and coaches went on stuff that they had, so we upped it a little bit, but it's half of what it normally is. So that's where everything has gone there. Variance, I think I've just gone over that, so it kind of explains what we just did, what I said. Physical education, the contractual services, basically that is what we do for health and safety, to repair equipment, take care of it throughout the physical education program. The supplies, as I've told you before in previous years, I take care of my brother, so that's both him and me together. When I say my brother, that's Dr. Morton. He has no supplies in his budget. Uncle Tom takes care of it. Okay? Overtime, that's Marlene, and that's a deal. That's truly a deal, because she spends many more hours than what that is. So, but basically physical education has stayed the same. There's no really variances in physical education because it is a mandated program. Opportunities and savings, we can cut the varsity assistant coaches as we did last year, and it's up there in the explanation. We can cut the modified teams, those particular teams, which will give us everybody equal across the board except for swimming and track, where they both have one team each. You've got a savings of $57,000 there in that part. This is something I learned a long, long time ago. Your athletic budget is less than 1% of the total school budget, but we deal with approximately 2,300 kids. I'm just going to open it up for questions. Take your shots now, because this is the best time.
Go ahead. Okay. As you are aware, I'm upset about the $5,000 that you're asking from the ice hockey.
Okay, go ahead.
Why I'm asking you this is because do you have a gate there? Do they pay money to come in?
Yes,
And who takes that money?
the school.
School gets the money. Is this something like the lottery? The education supposed to go for education? Is that what it is? You go and buy a ticket and you think you're gonna make more money for the booster club or this organization that you're going to. But no, you don't, because it goes into the pot and it's distributed just like as if it wasn't there.
I'm not arguing with you.
Okay. Plus you pay people to take the money for the tickets. Is that
Right.
true? Okay. So in other words, they're paying their way as far as the gate. I don't know what the gate is. I have no idea.
The gate goes in the general fund.
I understand that. Okay. They are paying to get into this game, and you're getting money from them.
Like
They
all
don't
the,
have a refreshment stand, right? You have to buy from their refreshment stand. Okay. So I'm very upset that they have to pay you $5,000. That's what I'm telling you. Okay. Somebody.
You want me to explain that or no?
You said that was an agreement you made with them.
Yes.
Well, I don't like that agreement, and I was not aware of that agreement.
That was made a year ago.
I know that, but I don't know if we were.
Explain it for us.
What it is, ice hockey, we have to rent the arena. Right. It's bloody expensive. We were looking at cuts last year, and I talked to Dr. Melvin. We went through the whole process. And one of the things, I went to the ice hockey boosters and asked them if they would be willing to come up with $5,000 to pay for some of the ice time. They were in agreement with that. They knew ahead of time. We went to them way ahead of time, so they had time to plan for it and take care of it, do their fundraisers and whatnot. That's the only part of the ice hockey program I touched. There obviously some other programs took some heavier hits through the process, so everybody gave a piece.
So they cover the 5,000, but what's the other part she's talking about? I'm sorry. What's the other part that she's talking about in terms of the concession and all that?
Well, most teams that have games here, they have a concession stand. Ice hockey does not, because the Twin Rinks runs their own concession stand. We also took, in working a deal with the Twin Rinks, he gave us a discount because we go at 5:30 in the morning, so we get a 15% discount on our ice time, which has helped us tremendously, and we found out this has worked out very, very well with the students, because now they're at 3 o'clock, they can go home and study and get their stuff done because practice hours can be ungodly with ice hockey. If any of you are familiar with ice hockey time, you can practice at 10 o'clock at night. And so there were some compromises that we made that we felt would be beneficial for everybody.
So like all of the other events where we hold them here, we have our concession stand, and part of that money goes to the booster, and part of the money goes to the school district.
The ice hockey does a lot of positive fundraising, and if you know Teresa Jackson, she is outstanding, and Teresa has really done a great job. And so when we sat down, if it was going to be a huge problem for them, then we would have looked at some other things. But they felt good about it and decided to go with it.
So they give us $5,000 plus.
Well, basically, they don't give us $5,000. They just pay the ice time.
They pay the ice time plus the money from the tickets goes
to the general fund
to pay for the hockey program.
No.
When I take admission prices, every time we collect money from admission, that money automatically goes to the general fund. Does not go to athletics. Okay.
So it doesn't matter football, basketball.
I don't care what it is. It just goes into the pot.
Buy a new truck, it goes for that too. Yeah. Okay, I'm not done yet. Okay. See what? Huh?
I didn't say you were done.
Okay. See, why I'm after this is because one of the teams went to Cortland a few times. And I didn't see anybody having to put up the money for that. And now you're taking $5,000 from these kids that don't have any way of collecting this money except fundraise. Do you know what $5,000 is to raise for money? It's a lot of money. It's a lot of time. It bothers me because this other thing just went through and we paid for that. See, and it upsets me. And not only was it was just for a few kids from what I understand. It wasn't like boys and girls. It was just for a few girls. It bothers me. I'm a girl, but it bothers me that we should all be working together. And I didn't see any snow in the backyard this year at all. I'm trying to figure out why you couldn't practice on the back field. Why you had to go to Cortland? Because I can understand if we got 50 million tons of snow, but we didn't. And then we needed to take away the snow when we needed the field, remember? Yeah. I'm just really upset. We're talking about, I think we got a letter about that. About the track team going to Cortland for
But what does that
practice.
have to do with our budget?
Well, because it cost district money for this. yet we're taking $5,000 away from the hockey team to pay for the ice. And it blows my mind. I'm sorry, but to me, it doesn't add up in my head, okay?
But
It's
just to,
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
Maybe.
I agree that it's a lot to ask a booster club to come up with, but this is not the first booster club that we've asked this of, correct? There are other booster clubs that are supplying their assistant coaches, so on and so forth, that probably are about the same amount of money. So
They wanted it, though. They asked for that. We didn't say they had to do that.
Did the Booster Club agree to the $5,000?
Yes, they did.
For ice hockey?
Yes.
Yes, I talked, Teresa Jackson is the president of Booster. I went through the process.
I understand. I'm asking that question. They agreed to it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so they agreed to it.
I only have one comment, and that is, as we're going through this process and we have to look at whatever cuts we have to make, and you gave your recommendations or whatever, I would hope that communication with these coaches in these sports has occurred before we make a decision, because then we don't hear about it 3 months later that they didn't know that there were positions being cut. Varsity coach didn't tell the JV coach or whatever, and then it comes down on us because that communication didn't happen. So I'm asking respectfully that these conversations take place clearly, loudly, so that everybody understands, and that it doesn't, it's tough enough for us to pick and choose. So then to find out that it wasn't an even playing field from the year before some decision, or 2 years ago some decision that we made, that people are complaining because it wasn't an even playing field going into the following year. All of this stuff is communication between you and your coaches and your whatever that would help us out greatly, so that we don't hear the repercussions afterwards.
I'm just going to explain one thing to you.
Yes.
I can sit, I can talk, I can explain. Doesn't mean the message gets through. Doesn't mean there's another way of going about trying to get what you want. When you take away from people,
Yes.
they always go find another avenue, another door, another
Yes.
window, another building to
Yes.
get what they want.
Yes.
That's what I will tell you.
Yes. But in the process, it comes back to us that we don't know what they decided or how they decided it, or we get thrown under the bus for decisions that we thought we were all upfront with in saying, that, and I'm not saying that you didn't have those conversations, but then it comes back to haunt us later. So.
Trust me, I understand what bus tires feel like. I've been driven over many, many times. I've been smacked, I've been hit, I've been cut, I've been shot. I understand what you're saying.
So, Mr. Jacob.
Pardon me?
So we acknowledge
I said
that as
it
we
was
have
nice
these
taking you on
conversations
tonight.
and we're making these, especially these presentations that are now public, that the appropriate directors will ensure that they have at least touch base with their staff
Yeah.
regarding what the initial recommendations are. Having said that, I do want to add that this is the initial recommendation.
Absolutely.
So there are more to come in
Yes.
the midst of this conversation. But yes, directors will ensure that they touch base with their individuals.
And these are only potential.
Right.
These are only potential, yes.
Right.
Who knows? Hold on
Tom,
one second.
I'm sorry.
Hold on one second, Bob. Kay, did you have anything else?
I just want to
Okay.
tell them this is my last time to get you, honey. I'm sorry.
You know something? I came fully expected to get shot, so don't worry about it. I live for these nights.
I feel so.
This is the height of my career right now. My skin is so thick it doesn't bother me. I understand the game, trust me.
You got to understand that when you go to a banquet, some people think that you just go for the food. That's not true. I go to find
That's
out
why I stopped
what
eating.
is going
That's
on.
why I stopped eating this year at the banquet, so I take less hits.
Sorry. It's nice to hear all these things because I didn't know that, and it kind of broke my heart.
I understand.
That they had to pay. I'm sorry, but $5,000 is a lot of money. I don't go for the food.
Okay, Mr. Crabtree, sorry about that.
I know, I want to ask about Section 3. I know last year they worked very hard. We had fewer games in some sports, fewer modified. Is Section 3 looking at anything for next year that might help us out?
I think we always look at what's going on. And I'm going to give just a short story. And I'm on a basketball committee. Obviously, this weekend, the games, the finals were in the Dome. We were fought pretty heavily about going into the dome because it would be expensive and would cost Section 3 and everything else. And obviously, that reflects back on us with dues and all that stuff. We had 11,000 people come through the gate this weekend. They've made more money than they've ever made in a basketball tournament. Obviously, the operator of dome operations, Mr. Pete Sala, helped us tremendously. So we're starting to work at how to generate more. We're also looking at how do we cut back. And as a league, we probably spend more time with that and how to cut back and regionalize more of our modified programs. And we're looking even now at the varsity level how we can cut down a little bit on our travel to keep things a little closer to home. Obviously, if we travel outside of Section 3, the teams pay for the trip. Inside Section 3, we're golden. So all of us as ADs are looking at what we can do to hopefully keep a product, but to keep the cost down. Don't stop now. God forbid you stop.
The team that's got to pay to go to Hudson Falls or whatever they're going.
No, that's part of, we have agreed to go into the state championship, so obviously the district picks this up.
And there's no way that you could get a real bus. Not that our school buses are not real, but they are.
I will not throw rocks at our transportation.
But,
I will not throw rocks at our transportation.
No, you ain't going to do that. But something that goes 65 miles an hour? The buses only go, what, 55 tops?
Those buses are expensive. They're
But do you want to understand that that's a hazard on the thruway? It's a hazard. Trust me, I rode it last year.
I know. I understand that. But my problem is it costs 3 to 4 times more.
Okay,
So
we go
I'm
55.
taking a beating because I should spend money or not spend money, and so we go with the yellow limo.
That's fine. It's just that I feel bad. Maybe they ought to put their flashers on. Because it's, all of a sudden you're going 80 because they don't know what 65 is, and all of a sudden you got this yellow thing in front of you. I mean, it's like, oh my God, are they going to hit us?
I understand.
Just,
On a positive note, we obviously approved your retirement last week. I want to thank you for the time that you put in.
Yes.
The 43 years that I have heard several times, I have to say.
It's not last week, it's tonight. Yeah, but it's on the agenda for tonight.
So I just want to thank you for that time.
I'm
I
going to
also want
explain
to thank
something
you
to you.
for your babysitting services.
It's
that
never,
you come to me
it's
with
never
at the
been
games.
about me or anything. We have a great staff. It's always been about kids. And what we do, I thoroughly enjoy. I think the 2 greatest things that we do here, and it's basically physical education. I think it's the Special Olympics, and I know a lot of you have been involved in. We take great, great pride in what we do with that particular event. And the other night, the other thing that we do that the physical education department came up with is a family fit and fun night where the staff comes in, donates their time to bring people in. They show them what you can do in 2 hours as a family. And to me, that's probably the most outstanding things we do. With all the athletics, yeah, that's great. There's a lot of time put in. There's a lot of things. And we've got great, great people. But I'm just one person. The staff is outstanding. And that's really the people that deserve all the thanks. They're the ones that do it. But thank you.
But I want to say thank you because, you had the conversations, as we call them, courageous conversations with the Booster Club parents. You prearrange a lot of this stuff to make this portion of our process a little easier. And your work pays off for us, maybe not for yourself, but it is for us. So
Well, again, we've got, Pat, I thank you. We've got great people, and it works out very, very well for us.
And I do want to add, which I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to do this again, but in the time that I've been here, I truly appreciate all of the hard work that you have done to continue to push forward the agenda for PE, for the athletic program. You're everywhere, every night, and I know the kids value seeing you. It was awesome to be at the high school when they pulled that basketball shirt up.
It's lucky I didn't know about it because it would never have happened.
I know, but in honor of you. So that in itself is a commitment to your hard work And so, just for me, like I said, being here from August until now, thank you for all of your support.
Thank you. I'm going to explain. I've never worked a day in my life. I like what I do. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Okay. Thank you. Right? You get them all?
Yep, we got them all.
Beautiful. Okay. We had superintendent's comments already, correct?
Yes. Can I make one more? I apologize. Just an update regarding the STRAP plan that we've scheduled a date to meet with the advisory or steering committee to review the draft strategic plan. We've also got an email which was sent out to the board to schedule 2 separate sessions to once again review the STRAP plan and meetings scheduled with the leadership team to review the draft. As indicated from the beginning, the STRAP plan will be implemented for next year. By the time the summer hits, we'll be doing some things to reflect what is in the STRAP plan, like implementing the new reorganizational structure. So continue to check the website for follow-ups. Individuals will be getting invites to attend the steering committee meeting that will be coming, that will be held at the end of March. And once the STRAP plan is done, we look forward to sharing it with the community, our stakeholders, internal and externally.
Thank you. Do we have any board comments? Committee reports?
I've had some, and I think Jackie has some, and I think they may be the same. Just give this a once-over lightly. We have $250 million that's been taken out of our state aid for education and put into a grant program that the majority of districts in the state are not even eligible to apply for those grants because of the specifications going with those grants. We've spoken to our legislators. We've written to them. We need to continue to do that because those funds could be better used and better applied to the lower wealth districts to increase some of the aid to them. When the governor increased aid by 4%, he didn't really. He increased it by 4%, less than $250 million, and gap adjustments and whatever. But I ask you to write, to call your legislators and to let them know that you would like to see those monies applied and returned to the state aid pool for this year. That's right now a top priority. They have between the 14th and the 19th of this month to make whatever changes to the governor's budget that can be made, and so we really need to keep up the pressure because that's something that would not cost any more money in terms of the allotment, but it would do a great deal in terms of some equity for the really financially strapped districts, and we are among them. So, thank you.
Well, I think you said it all, but we're still continuing to visit with legislators as a group. Some administrators, some board members, and some union officials are going together to talk to these legislators to make it known that we really need to have that earmarked for competitive grants. Monies should be taken back to the districts that need it.
Anyone else? Okay. Routine action items, any discussion or questions on routine action items A and B? Motion to take them as a group. Sandy, second. Michael, on the end. Recommended action is to approve A and B as submitted. All in favor? That's unanimous. Discussion action item A. Who wants to discuss that one? Discussion action item A.
At this time, we're recommending that the board take action to abolish the Director of Computer Technology position. This is part of the budget cuts. I know it's a difficult decision, the first of probably several to follow, but we're asking that that be done tonight because by contract in that unit, we need to give employees a 6-month notice if their job is being abolished and they are being put on layoff status. So if this decision is made tonight, it would become effective on September 6th.
Any questions on that item?
Yeah, it was made clear tonight that the technology department in this district has a very big stake in a lot of different areas. I feel like we need a little bit more time to discuss this before we make the decision, and if it's all right with everyone, I'd like to table it for us to discuss in executive session and resume at a later date.
Well, we have a request for a motion to table this decision. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion failed. Well, we can't, there's no real discussion that we can have on this other than
The only 2 cents I could throw in, if for some reason in the budget process the board does decide that we need to make a further investment in technology, the position could be reconstituted. I mean, but at this stage of the game, what we do know is that we have a significant budget gap. And with all due respect to Chris, he's served the district for almost 9 years. I would say to you that given the fact that we have to give 6 months' notice, I think it's important that you take action on this tonight. Again, you can always revisit the decision later and reconstitute the job, but you've only cost the district more money by delaying the decision. That's just my 2 cents.
And
I would just like to, I'm sorry. I would just like to add one thing that this resolution is to abolish the position, and then the individual holding the position being put on layoff status is in the personnel section. And by layoff status, if the position were to come back with this title and these duties, Chris would have the rights to be recalled for a 7-year period. That's not by contract, that's education law.
Go ahead, Kim.
I just want to add that there was extensive conversation about the IT department. We understand the importance of IT in the district, and so I can assure you that we're not dropping the ball. We are looking at how we will proceed, and I think that we have a good plan in place to address the change. Once again, I can assure you that the ball will not be dropped as it relates to IT and how it supports the district's initiatives, but also ensuring that students are receiving what they need to be successful.
Could I make a comment, please?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
My concern with this is that the Director of Technology has a lot of responsibilities. There's some educational responsibilities, there's technical. And I have a concern. I have not seen a plan of redistribution of administration responsibilities. That's my concern. I'm thinking we're proving something before we've seen something else. And that's why I'm opposing this tonight, because there's a lot of people that are under this director that I don't know are going to have the same leadership. So that's my concern. If I could see a chart of what administrators were having what responsibilities, I could vote for this, but I have not seen it yet.
Yeah, I want to agree with that. I'd feel much more comfortable making some sort of decision after seeing the plan that we're going to be putting in place. Without knowing our full extent of our administrative plan, I don't think it's right for us to make a decision without seeing the full picture. I mean, this is a very, very core program in the school district that every single person that attends the school or works here uses every day. So taking that away, I think, is going to topple the department, and I don't think that's a choice that we can make, at least not without seeing the full extent of where we're going. And that's something that we haven't seen yet.
But I think we did get an explanation, and we did have a conversation regarding how those duties would be divided. This is not new.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead. And to add,
to speak to what Tony's saying, we did have a brief conversation about this, yes. I agree that this is a big decision because, it kind of tells us where our priorities are as far as technology is concerned, I think. But I think we also do need to take into consideration what Don has just shared with us, that it can be put back into the budget after we see the plan, after we see further conversation with this. This isn't the end of the discussion. It's just what we need to do our due diligence with.
This is the first of many, many difficult decisions we're going to have to make.
Exactly.
Anything else? Okay, the recommended action is to approve that resolution. Have a motion? Sandy? Second, Tony?
Actually, it's the other way around.
Tony?
She had it in first.
Tony and Sandy. All in favor? Opposed? And one abstention. Did you get that, Connie?
Yep.
Okay, motion carried. Refunding bond resolution. Don, could you please go
As you
through that
folks
real
are well aware, the interest rate environment has been very favorable, and we're taking advantage of yet another opportunity by looking at our bonds that were issued in 2001, 2004, and 2006. And we've identified a savings of about $467,000 or $46,000 annually. So we're going to go ahead and refinance those bonds, and that'll be almost $50,000 a year in savings toward our closing our gap.
Any questions on that? Give me a second here.
Want to read mine?
I'm just going down to the end here. Okay. Do we need a... We don't need a roll call for this, do we? The recommended action is to approve that resolution as submitted. Was that Scott down there?
Yep.
And Jackie? All in favor? That's unanimous also. We have a gift.
Michael, do you want to talk about the gift a little bit, since you were instrumental in...
Yeah, sure. You all are familiar with the Fangler Foundation, right? I'm sure you have all met the family at one point or another. Hank was just inducted into the Wall of Distinction at the high school on Friday night. The foundation, as you all know, was started because his son died because of cancer. And over the past decade, they've been finding new ways to help students out in the district to kind of prolong the vision of their son through Mac computers. The junior high school tech crew wrote to the Fangler Foundation asking for a donation that would be used for all of the productions for in-school events and out-of-school events in this auditorium. So the Fanglers came in last week. They met with us. They took a look at what we did, and they wanted to grant us this gift of a new Mac Pro.
Thank you, Michael. Again, it never ceases to amaze me the way that people come to our aid and the kind of things that our taxpayers and our people give to us. Our recommended action is to accept with gratitude the gift of the $4,956 to the North Syracuse Junior High School Tech Crew. Michael, you want to make the motion? Second. Scott, all in favor? That's unanimous. Do we need an executive session before we take up personnel items A, B, and C? Recommendation to take them as a group. Is that Sandy and Jackie? Just want to announce the retirements, if I could. In personnel A. Hold on, I just got to get to them. Diane Izakayan retires. She's with 17 years of service. She's an elementary school teacher at Kyle W. Siley Bear Road Elementary. And personnel B. Did we take this group? John Witz, secretary, Joanne Witz, I'm sorry.
It's John
School Secretary 1, North Syracuse Junior High School, retires with 7 years of service. I think that's it for 2. And, of course, we talked about Mr. Tatum earlier. I got to get him. We talked about Tom Tatum. That's okay. He did a tremendous job for us through the years. I think it was said around the table, Pat so eloquently, and Dr. Dice. He did a wonderful, wonderful job, and he will be missed. Also, Dr. Morton, another wonderful employee of ours, whose contributions to our district you'd be hard pressed to name them all. I can just say that I enjoy his guitar playing at the Christmas parties every year. At our morning Christmas breakfast, Dave usually will serenade us, and he's just a wonderful employee and a wonderful friend. And they will be greatly missed, and we wish them well in their retirement. Recommended action is to approve A, acknowledge B, and approve C as submitted. All in favor? That's unanimous. And I would like to make a motion. No, that's not it. Here it is. That we move into executive session for the purpose of reviewing the employment history of one individual with no action to follow. Second. Tony, all in favor? Unanimous, and we're adjourned.